We have Martha Lanning that you're going to hear from in a few minutes. She has been with us before. She is amazing. You will love listening to her and you will learn a lot. Jim will do a presentation first. I will just say a few words as I typically do. And as you know, if you've been here over the years, I'm always sort of scratching my head about what to talk about in the beginning of a meeting. And I'm always asking my husband, like, what's on his mind? And then whatever he says, I decide on my own what I'm going to talk about. But I was thinking this week, whatever's on my mind is sort of random, but it probably reflects what's on a lot of people's mind, because I'm living in the same world in the same country that you are. And this week, really what has been on my mind are guns, the random shootings recently, and the headline in the New York Times, "Our country is armed to the teeth, and therefore these things happen." And an article that I don't know how many of you might have read in the New York Times about 4 days ago about the 3 Connecticut detectives who were first on the scene at Sandy Hook and what their experience was like and what impact it has had on their life. I wept through that article. It was really hard to read. It's hard to remember. But after those events, it just made me think about what we're doing in 31st Street. And we always say, like, we're in 31st Street in part for therapy to stay sane, which is definitely true. But when things like that happen and it's sort of on your mind and you're feeling like we're never going to change gun laws in this country, it's just never going to happen. All I think about is thank God I'm in 31st Street, because at least we're doing something real. We are trying to elect Democrats, and there is a real benefit to have Democrats in legislatures in every state. We can get the majority, and obviously in the House and obviously in the Senate. But it's just, I don't know, it just felt like a very concrete goal over the last couple of weeks. And sometimes it feels more abstract, sometimes it's like we're doing good. We're trying to get as many Democrats as we can. We're building infrastructure. We're trying to reach out to voters of color, voters who are rural, voters who are, disenfranchised. But for some reason, thinking about guns in this country just made me feel like what we do is concretely necessary every day. And I am thankful that you're all here with us, because we're going to talk about infrastructure and Democratic Party building. And every time we think of the next thing to do with Jim's help, it's important. It's like one teeny brick that we're putting in a foundation to get this country to be more sane than it is. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to turn it over to Jim and look forward to hearing from you, Martha.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Love working with you. I don't say that often enough, but it's definitely very true. So I think I know everybody on this call. So, I'm the political analyst, and really like making these presentations too. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in, because that's the way I feel like I can communicate. We'll go with this one and with this one. Okay, people see and hear me okay? Raise your hand. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to, Martha is the main attraction, and I'm going to try to get things set up, so, to make that happen. But there's a lot going on, and a lot of things I want to say, probably too much, but I'm going to go through some stuff pretty fast. So hold on to your seatbelts with that. So starting with this, I like to start with the macro in a way. And the macro key point is that the MAGA extremist Republicans are definitely overplaying their hand. And I'm going to show some data and some other stuff to make that case. The large majority of Americans do want to keep mifepristone and misoprostol available with a prescription in this case, and including a fair number of Republicans, if you can look down at the bottom of that. So they're way off there. That's our biggest driver in a way right now. Lisa mentioned gun violence. That shifted in our direction as well from almost a year ago. Whether people will vote on it is something else, but hopefully enough people will vote on it, especially young people, that it will help us. One other point is Trump's criminality, corruption, if you will. And this is a decent study. Navigator is one of my favorite sources for these kinds of surveys. Large majority of voters actually support him being indicted in the New York context. If you look at the wording here, we don't have time to go into it, but of course there's more indictments to follow. So that's another obvious example of the extremism. Even though he's doing really well compared to DeSantis in the polling, I still think either one of them would be a weak opponent for us. Okay, just some more examples of their overreach. Ukraine, some of them want to, not support Ukraine. Don't say gay. Libraries, right? And finally, even Mickey Mouse. And there are other examples, and they're just going too far. And people, I think, understand that. Many of them, although not everyone, of course. That's part of our problem. And as a result, this I thought was actually pretty heartening to see. Again, Navigator. And this is a poll of registered voters. And you can see just how unpopular the House Republicans are, especially some of the more extreme ones, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, who looks very vulnerable to me as an example of all this. Of course, this is just one part of MAGA. What they're doing is scary. What they're doing with the debt ceiling is scary. But again, that should motivate us. And I'm confident that for many of it, that kind of crazy activity does motivate us. Okay, now flipping though, I've talked about all that craziness, but the fact is that the economy is still far and away, in my view, and I think a lot of other informed observers, far and away the most important issue, or set of issues. And here's again, Navigator on the Inflation Reduction Act. And again, we don't have time to deal into the exact wording here, but once people understand what it is, especially one of the several features of power to negotiate lower drug prices for Medicare, people really love that. You can see there's huge support for that. Even though people say they've heard of it, the fact is people don't really know that much about it. That's our problem. That's our big problem, that people don't really know that much about what it is that Biden has done and what the Democrats are doing, because there's so much disinformation and lack of information out there. And partly as a result of that, we're still really, really underwater when it comes to the economy. And these are really pretty startling numbers to me that still, even though COVID is, in some ways largely past, even though we're technically not in a recession, many people believe that we are in a recession, and they personally may well be in a recession. But these numbers are really very, very negative for us. And the Federal Reserve, by the way, is only making this worse. They're driving us more into a recession. So the problem is that Biden basically takes the blame for all this. And again, it's part of our need to get better information out there. Hence, here we go, our initiative, one of our 3 major infrastructure building initiatives, and it's a lot, I will submit and admit. We have this 2 great leading lights in the field of, I call it anti-MAGA media or anti-MAGA disinformation, Dan Pfeiffer and Tara McGowan. Hopefully almost everybody on this call has already signed up for this thing. The idea is that, I've talked at the last meeting about the different streams of how we fight that. how we fight anti-MAGA disinformation. One is on our own and sort of reaching out to our networks and trying to provide, and there's a whole set of movements about talking louder. That's what Simon Rosenberg basically advocates. But we also think it's important, while all those people are zigging, we want to zag with funding what we think are good opportunities to run counter to, and it takes money. So here we are, the space is limited. Mary says that as of earlier this afternoon, 913 people had signed up for this thing. We have 26 co-sponsored. So if you haven't signed up already, my suggestion is you sign up early, and also you come a little early, because our capacity is 1,000. I don't think we'll reach 1,000 actually that attend, but our strategy, by the way, was to make this not just a 31st Street thing. We're trying to sort of make the grassroots ecosystem in general understand that this is an important problem and this is something to invest in, and we just want to get things moving. 31st Street will be doing something important, but we want everybody to be sort of heightened in their awareness. All right, so I can't resist showing this slide every meeting. I won't go into a lot of description. Most of you, I think, have seen it, but just if you look at the margins and you look at the Electoral College for Biden's win, notice that Wisconsin's right at the middle, Pennsylvania and Arizona right on the sides. So, and also other key states. These are our swing states for the important presidential race. So that brings us to our priorities for 31st Street, which are, of course, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and we're going to hear about, I think, some about Arizona from Martha later. Virginia, because of the election. Those of you who live in Virginia, we will be going in very vigorously once the primary is over, and we're already working with major partners. We already have candidates that we think will be important to support. We'll be doing canvassing. So we look forward to that. All right, now I do want to reflect on Wisconsin. So we all celebrated that, right? Okay, so that's a celebration, but let's look back at how did that happen? And let me just say that race was run exceedingly well. And the people who ran it were the Wisconsin Democratic Party. Yes, they had a lot of partners, but they're the ones that ran it. And that's why that was such a success. So the stars aligned for that. So all these other groups fell into line with the Wisconsin Democratic Party. And that's why it's so important to have a strong Democratic Party, which we mostly don't have, unfortunately. They got out early, they got out hard and strong. They were data driven. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. They pushed every channel for voter outreach. And here's something I especially love. They targeted my favorite low propensity voters, including students, but not just students. Hope you've heard me talk about that. That was part of the reason. And they knew the opposition. They knew what the opposition was going to do. They did this. They were going to do the same thing as they did to Mandela Barnes. And sure enough, they did. And it didn't work because our folks were prepared. Of course, but they had a huge amount of money. And that, of course, helped as well. All right. So a little bit of data. This is a little hard to sort of digest, but let me just sort of go over here to the right where I've got this little circle. Hope you can see this. So sure enough, whenever this was kind of like late February or something, the right wingers started with their attack ads. And this is basically saying, oh yes, Judge Janet is too soft on crime. And it was working. It started to work. And in fact, her polling dropped from about a 10-point lead to about a 5-point lead at that time. But, our folks were not, letting the grass grow underneath their feet or whatever metaphor you want to show, because they were also doing very aggressive ads as well. Call them negative ads if you want. Negative ads, contrast ad, assertive ads. And this is a lesson learned for Supreme Court races. We didn't do this in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the Supreme Court candidates did not want to get out on the issues. They just wanted to be, I'm a fair judge, vote for me. I mean, I'm oversimplifying that. In this case, we ran, this is television. And even though I disparage television some of the time, television is important. Here's the kind of ads that they did. A lot of it was abortion. Dobbs obviously helped us a lot, but they also did some good ads on corruption, taking Kelly to task for basically recusing himself and then unrecusing himself when he got a campaign donation. They had their own public safety kind of issues. They went on Social Security. Meanwhile, Kelly and his people, they just had one playbook. I mean, he was not a strong candidate. I mean, we can't assume this momentum is just going to go on by itself, folks. I mean, there were a lot of things that helped us. And one of the things was he was not a strong candidate. All right, so recall that we supported grassroots groups in Wisconsin. So why did we do that? We did that because the Democratic Party was getting a lot of money. The Democratic Party was supporting a lot of efforts in urban and suburban kinds of areas, but not all that much in some of the what I call rural-ish kinds of areas. So we looked hard and we found two grassroots groups that we thought would be worthy of support. So now this figure shows, on the one hand, the counties that Biden won, and on the other hand, the counties that Judge Janet won. And you'll see that a lot of other counties, including rural counties in like the southwest part of the state, for example, she also carried. Of course, she did 5.5% better than Biden, so you'd expect that. And here's one area where one of our groups, Progress North, worked. They had 5 counties. The 3 ones in green that I've circled here, they have been traditionally Democratic counties, but because they're near Duluth, they're sort of working class to some extent. They've been trending more red recently, but they bounded back. And one of the counties, Bayfield, which is this one right here, the largest one, actually Judge Janet won it by 61%. But also the other area that we did, which is where GROW operates, 6 counties that they operate. Their biggest counties were these 2, Pierce and Dunn County. Those counties were actually carried by Judge Janet that Biden didn't carry. So this is kind of a crude analysis, I will admit to you, but I will say it's definitely in the right direction. And I did go to the trouble to kind of actually look at some of the raw numbers. And again, it's when you look at this kind of data, it's not obviously, we don't know who voted what and so forth. But overall, Judge Janet, this is Wisconsin, she did 5.5% better than Biden. If you look at all the counties that Progress North worked in, it was maybe 0.3% better, and where GROW worked, it was 0.5% better than that. And I can't say that that's what our folks made that difference. How much is this difference? Well, it's some hundreds of voters, probably, I like to think. And but that's what, in a swing state like Wisconsin, that's very respectable. That's a very good outcome. But also, we are supporting these groups, again, if you'll recall, so they would have a good shot at doing well in 2024, and they'll continue that work. All right, and here, of course, are our 2 intrepid, wonderful canvassers who spent a week and a half, Diane and Catherine, look at that smile. And the people in Kenosha loved her. You can see how cold it was. Like, these are Wisconsin people. Look how they're dressed. And they're just intrepid, and they inspired the organizer said they inspired the local people to work harder because they were so conscientious of working hard. All right, now switching to what we have in front of us and moving us on toward Martha, just to say that, recall, we have this huge 2024 election set of priorities, and I've got in some ways the most important ones in red. Especially the US president. If we lose that, we are really obviously worse than sunk. So key point, for everybody, strategically, 2023 has to be an infrastructure building year. I was never a high school athlete or football, anything like that, but I'm told that the coaches would say that the games are won in the off season. And so this is now our time to build the infrastructure. And we have three important things we want to be doing. Democratic state parties that are so important to doing well, the anti-right-wing propaganda that is so important to doing well as well, and of course, grassroots groups, which also starve during the off season, but need to be sustained. And what do you suppose this is going to take, folks? That's right, money. Now, we haven't asked you for money in about a month and a half or something like that. But I just want to prepare you that it's going to take money. We are going to be asking you for money, not just your own, but reaching out to people the way our fundraising folks do so well. You know, we did raise $2.25 million last year, thanks to you. And thank you so much for that. I don't think we'll raise that much this year. You know, rationally, we should be raising that much money for these kinds of efforts, even though it's harder. And I mean, I can tell you that it's, as I like to say, sort of sexy to support candidates and elections and the thrill of the, you know, the chase and so forth. But already the marquee candidates, the House candidates that are at risk, they're already raising huge amounts of money. So this is where we really want to zig when other people are zagging to do this infrastructure. And I think with that, I will stop and turn it over in a minute to Martha Lanning, who will tell you a little bit more about herself. And she's no stranger to us. We love her. She was the former chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party and the founder of the State Party Advancement Network. So turning it over to you now, Martha.
Thanks so much, Jim. If you can let me share, there we go. I've got a quick little presentation here for you, and then I guess we have great time for questions. So first, thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks, Jim, for sharing all that great information. And Lisa, you know, I just want you to know we're all emotional about this, and organizations like you, today is my birthday, and I am here because all of you give me energy. And I'm like, absolutely, I will come talk to 31st Street because you make me really push through at times when I'm feeling just like you were sharing. So I'm Martha Lanning. I'm from the State Party Advancement Network. But for those of you who may not know who I am, I ran for office as a state Senate candidate in Wisconsin, was supposed to win. I did, you know, close a 2% spread, Martha. I did 7% better than the top of the ticket, but yet I lost by 20%. So long story short, I said, what just happened? And I jumped in and started to learn more about our democracy. And what I found out was state parties are really, really important, and they're really underfunded. And so I learned that for our movement to be successful, we need a three-legged stool: strong candidates, strong issue advocacy for gun safety and for the environment and for abortion, all those things to motivate people. But we also need strong state parties because they are out there and they have a unique responsibility to do certain things. So first thing is, there are a lot of election laws. They can help candidates. They can lean in and do training. They can do messaging. They can do field programs. They can communicate with them without limitation. And that is really important for our candidates, to have a strong partner that can help them and not, you know, just be non-existent. They own the voter data. So they are responsible to get it from the Secretary of State. They're responsible for monitoring it, but they're also responsible for capturing all that data that is done by grassroots organizers, by volunteers that are out there capturing that data and being sure we retain it. And they're responsible for appointing or helping elect really important positions. We all saw what happened with the Electoral College and the threats that the Republicans were making. It is our team that needs to be sure that we're only electing electors that are going to do what we need them to do, that we are being sure that our election administration is being done by people who are honest and fair. Sorry, I have something tickling in my throat. So they're really important. So what happens at the State Party Advancement Network when we started 2 cycles ago now? is that we set out to build a donor table that supports state parties. And the first thing we need to do is to be sure that in the center there, that they have the resources. You would be shocked to know how few resources some state parties have. They can barely keep the lights on. So we are building up those pool of donors that can help them have key positions so that they have an organizing director year round, a voter protection director year round, comms director. We need those positions. But in addition to that, being that I was from business, sometimes it doesn't make sense for each state party to have certain positions. So SPAN members actually fund what we call operational support organizations too, that are there only for the purpose of helping state parties do high level thinking or a high level work. And so by having these organizations that would surround a state party, we can build power, we can save money, and we get a better return on our investment. And I'm going to talk to you about the two of them because we only have two. We have the yellow one there, Stack Labs, and we have a second one, Dem Power Labs. So I'm going to give you a brief little overview of them. So first, why are they important? When I was an executive director and somebody told me to go hire the data director, or when I was the chair, hire a data director, I know nothing about data. So how am I supposed to interview someone and pick the best candidate and know that they're going to do a good job for us? So having someone who can help with that is key. Best practices. Each of the states are responsible for running their own programs, but we don't have a great way to share best practices in a certain area across all the states. The DNC tries to do this, and they do, but they don't have the resources to really work with the states directly. So having someone to bridge that gap would be ideal. Plan development. Sometimes there are programs that you need to have a plan. How are you going to ramp up an organizing program and those kinds of things? And sometimes the people that we can afford to hire don't have all those skills. So having someone who's ensuring that our plans are good is important. Expertise, troubleshooting. When a crisis happens, it's often you need partners, and to be able to turn to a team that can stop everything and jump in because something really critical has happened is invaluable. And finally, continuity. Many of you remember that I've talked before about how state chairs can turn over. And when they turn over, sometimes all but some of the staff leave. By having these support organizations around a state, we keep continuity. We can work with the new chair to say, oh, we've got that here. That's where this is what we had, or this is what we did in the past. And it's just invaluable. So to give a couple quick examples of what has happened in tech, for instance, never before have we gone through and done what we call a VAN audit. It's just a simple data audit that businesses do constantly. There's something called a NIST. It's a very technical, but just getting a 1-point increase in your NIST score, it's a 1 to 5 score, increased data by 12%. So let me give you an example. When I ran for office, it says Martha Lanning, volunteers went out and captured, are you supporting Martha Lanning? But nobody took the time to say Martha Lanning is the Democratic candidate. And so when Joe Biden or any presidential comes in and says, hey, I need to gather data about voters, you can't use any of my data because nobody put that Martha Lanning was a Democratic candidate, and the presidential doesn't have time to go find out who is Martha Lanning. Is she the Republican or is she the Democrat? So simple little things that sometimes a data director just simply never was trained on how to do that well can make a big difference, and we can have better data. Automating things, you guys would be frightened to see some of the things that they do that we should be automating. For instance, when I was chair, key entering a check into a system and not having a check reader, just having tech there to help our state parties so that they're using their staff time for the most impactful work directly with the candidates or with the voters. And crisis management, like I'd mentioned before, you might all remember when the Iowa caucus happened and what a disaster it was. The tech team that is helping states, Iowa was not one of their clients, but they immediately sent a team to Nevada to say, we got to fix this for you before this happens again. And so just having that kind of crisis management is valuable. So democracy protection, this last cycle, we decided to pilot. And I got to tell you that Kim Allen is on the call tonight. So if there's questions, you're going to ask her because I'm not the expert on this, but there was so much money being given to state parties to hire voter protection and democracy protection people, but we were seeing that the state parties were struggling to find people that knew what to do and to hire the right people. And we really needed a team there that had that expertise that could mentor these states. And so they worked with 3 states. In Pennsylvania, They ended up, after the election was over and we had such big wins for the statewide candidates, there were 3 House seats that were very, very close. And it was the difference between the Democrats having the majority or not. Literally, the coordinator was shutting down because, you know, Shapiro had won and we're done. And this team leaned in and helped the House, and they connected with Stack Labs, found out who those ballots were, and helped cure those ballots. It was amazing, and how important it was to have that expertise. In Arizona, you might remember there were problems with the voting machines, etc. That team was there to advise. They had already helped them set up a really good plan to be ready for problems and to be able to address them. But they were also there as experts to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Like, they were ready to support Arizona. And finally, in Michigan, they have a much stronger program, which is something else I really like about these organizational units that help our states. In the states that have a more advanced program like Wisconsin and Michigan, they can help them get even better. But in states that are just starting out and are just like, wow, where do we even start? They can come in at that level too. So they're really important. The last thing I want to just share with you is it's not just about this centralized support that SPAN members are supporting. It's also the boots on the ground. And what are some of the amazing things that happened? So in Arizona, you're going to be disappointed to know that there was a 6% drop off in Latino voters. We had a 6% loss of Latino voters in 2022. But the state party has been having this grassroots, like an organizer that is just working with the people on the street. They're not campaign driven. They're not just knocking doors, but they're really getting into the community. They identified that we needed to do something that is really speaking to these voters in a different way. And they did a campaign called This Is Our Party. And it was a digital campaign driving on the issues that this constituency organizing team felt was important. The program was a huge success. 34,000 new voters came out from the Latino community. So we at SPAN are saying, can we compare and contrast? Like, why didn't we do more of that and less of what we were spending so much money on to do wasn't as successful? So it was a great thing that we did it. And we can now, Texas right now is asking for that information and wants to share it. So really good things there. In Michigan, I've been telling you over and over again that Michigan's grown stronger and stronger every cycle. Their field program has been up since 2017. They did 5 million doors and had over 34,000 volunteers. And why could they do that? Because they've had their organizing program up for 6 years. It's been building and getting stronger and making more connections and relationships. And I don't need to push that to all of you because you know how important grassroots is. In New Hampshire, so we needed to win with Maggie Hassan, and she had barely won the last time she ran. We knew that the red towns were where it was at. We needed to do better in our redder areas. We weren't going to win, but we needed to do better. And the SPAN members helped fund a program that was the Red Town Project, really getting out there in areas that normally we don't organize in. It was a huge success. Maggie Hassan won by a much larger margin than she won before. But in addition, we had wins in areas people didn't think were possible. For instance, Bedford is a really red area, and we actually elected someone to the town council and the school board there, which was really exciting. So showing that if we show up and we organize at a grassroots level, we can make a difference. I'm not even going to say, it's just Judge Janet is here. Life in Wisconsin is going to get so much better. And Jim gave you a really good overview of that. And then Pennsylvania, you know, I know that we invested in a field program. We wanted that field program to carry over to the next cycle. And it is something that we're learning about, like, how do we keep these programs when there is changeover within the chair and the executive director? Like, how can we do that? And we are making some changes to help with that. But even though that program didn't fully carry over, you need to know that they did 32% more doors in that last 5 weeks of the election than they did in 2018. And that's because of that big runway that they had, that they were able to get people on the ground. They were able to make some relationships. Now, was it perfect? Nope. And actually no state. I can go find things in Michigan and Wisconsin that are not working great, but it made a big impact, which was great. So finally, Arizona, I'm going to share with you that we got a lot of good things happening in Arizona. They are a very new battleground state, so they are not nearly the strength of Michigan or Wisconsin. They have a new chairwoman who's came on board, and I love her, and she's very excited about doing exactly what we all believe in, which is building that grassroots. They are going to double down on their constituency organizing. So you might remember that SPAN members funded the very first Native American constituency organizer. Again, this cycle, voter turnout in our Native American lands went up by 2%, which if you looked at Katie Dobbs' numbers, that made a big difference, right, for her. In addition to that, though, for the first time in history on 4 tribal lands, that white organizers were allowed to come and organize on tribal lands. And that's because of that relationship that SPAN members are helping build. So really important. Democracy protection is another big issue for them. Their voter protection director is staying. We really want that Dem power support to help her now that we have a bigger runway, because we came in so late last year, but work with this woman that's going to carry over into this cycle and help her build the voter protection program that the state really needs. And then finally, organizing. They had a year-round organizing program. It was called 1530. And the chairwoman said, everybody keeps talking about they want 1530 back. They want 1530 back. So the chairwoman is committed to trying to raise enough money to be able to bring this program back. So we're really excited about what we see Arizona is trying to do, because it is about helping engage in our community so that we can build from the grassroots up, build from our local municipal races up. And that's what it's all about. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see each other better a little.
Martha, you're so wonderful. You're so clear. Like, you just delivered a ton of information, none of which I would typically understand, but I think I understand everything you said.
All right.
Great.
I love that. And I'm just going to tell you that if you ask me any of the technical or the democracy, I'm going to tell you, okay, I'll get back to you on some of those things, because I am very happy to have such great partners that are helping us make this work happen. So let me hear, what are your questions? What do you want to know about?
Hey, Martha, I'm Aaron. I'm the membership chair at 31st Street, and also
I know you, Aaron. Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's always our pleasure to have you with us. And we already have questions streaming in through the chat. The first one is, can you talk a little bit more about getting more out of the red areas? A number of us were canvassing in Pennsylvania, knocking those doors in those red districts, and it was tough hoeing. But tell us more about that.
So our long-term goal at SPAN is that we need to at minimum hold our red areas. And what we want to do is start building discussion so that we can take back, that we can gain back some of that support. When we're radio silent and there's no messaging going out in our red areas, we're just getting redder and redder and redder. Now, when it comes to organizing, I think it is a heavy lift for us, even a 20-person team to organize a whole state like Pennsylvania. It is a very heavy lift. You're never going to get all of it happening at once, but what's key is show me that you're making an impact in certain areas. What we saw was, and actually your organizers, I loved hearing how they actually motivated more of our people to come out, because the only way we can win is we need more people to be leaning in, to be talking to your neighbors, to be knocking on doors, to be, to be having that conversation. A lot of people say, don't talk about politics. I'm like, we got to talk. We don't have to talk about it in a way that gets people upset, but we've got to be having those conversations. So we are encouraging, the number one thing we want people to do on the boots on the ground is building an organizing team that will organize volunteers. And over time, like Michigan, have 34,000 volunteers that are leaning in and helping talk about things in their community. And the best way we do that is to have an organizing team at the state level that can find those influencers in the community and slowly but surely start building them up to have those conversations and build those teams.
Great. And can you tell us just how big a staff do you have to provide all this support to the state parties?
So SPAN, so the State Party Advancement Network, which is just 3 of us, and we are just the group that works with the donors, okay? We do not give advice. Kim will be happy to know. We do not give advice about democracy protection to anyone or voter protection. I don't do any technical advice. You'll all be happy to know. Like, we don't do that. So that's a different team of people, and that we just evaluate who are the best people to give this support to state parties. And then we monitor to be sure that the work being done is valuable and that it is worth our money. The other thing you all need to know is I get paid by, we have 6 guiding members. I think it's going to grow to 8. And we get paid by people who say, this is great. Like what you're doing and helping us organize and monitor the investments and being sure that money is being paid wise or used wisely. We're paid by other people. So 100% of your money that you give to a state party goes to the state party to pay for program.
Great. And another question that popped up. What's the advantage of contributing to your organization instead of the DNC? I'm sure you have a good answer for that one.
So when you say you're going to contribute to my organization, you're really contributing to state parties. So today my ask is for you to give to the Arizona Democratic Party. We're focusing on that. And my number one need there right now is that organizing voter protection director. She really wants to continue having Dem Power support, Dem Power Labs. So that organization to work with her to help create the best plan for this cycle, to prepare for all the different things they need to be ready for. They have a nice runway here to get ready for that, and she wants that support. So you're not giving to me or SPAN, you're giving to the Arizona Democratic Party. Now, the DNC does really good stuff. They have a great database. They have a voter protection team that is worrying about what the president needs done and be focusing on things. The DNC loves Stack Labs. Stack Labs is the #1 user of the DNC's portal, they call it. It's a tech term, but Stack helps state parties get the most out of the DNC's work. And Dem Power Labs is actually helping to be sure that that the DNC is getting what they need done. So Kim, can you share a little bit more, since you specifically, can you share how you work with the DNC and how Dem Power Labs ensures the DNC's work's getting done too?
Yeah, absolutely. So the DNC provides sort of large oversight and support for state party voter protection programs, but their resources are spread across every state. And so they aren't able to go as deep in supporting the states and work hand in hand with the state parties on a day-to-day basis on the issues that come up. And so our work is really designed to be coordinated with the DNC. We've had a lot of calls and conversations with them, and we talk about our work and how we can help boost their efforts, but we go deeper. And so it's important, of course, that when issues come up with state parties, that they've got someone who can weigh in, who can be a thought partner and help them in an actionable way, help them basically translate best practices into a strategy on the ground to deal with whatever issue is coming up. So really our support is different in that it's more hands-on. It's a day-to-day kind of support instead of something like a weekly check-in call, and it's designed to work with the programs in thought partnership and to boost the overall efforts that the DNC has.
Great, thank you. We've had a couple of questions about individual states. One about North Carolina, it has new leadership. How do you think that's going to, is that a good place to go to? And then also Virginia. Are you doing anything in Virginia? The Democratic Party there needs assistance. And are you engaged with other Virginia groups other than 31st Street Swing Left? So maybe talk about NC and Virginia.
Okay, so NC first. So Anderson is the chair there, and we have met with Anderson and we're kind of evaluating what she's doing. She needs to hire an executive director because just like any business, you can come in and you can say, hey, I'm supposed to be sure that you're successful. We need somebody who knows how to run this business well. And so she right now is in the process. They have over 60 resumes, and we told them we would lean in and help them look through those resumes. But we're really focused on watching who she hires for executive director and then what their actual plan is. We love hearing that she wants an organizing program on the ground. We love hearing about a lot of her ideas and her plans, but we want to see the actual, put it on paper. Here's what the plan is. This is how we're going to accomplish it. And this is the kind of money we're going to need to raise and who her targets to be able to raise that kind of money. So that's kind of where we are with them right now. We're supporting them as much as we can to get them started. With Virginia, we do not, SPAN does not have Virginia as one of our target states, not because they're not important, they are super important, but Virginia has a lot of connections to be able to raise money and has done a great job with that. However, Kim, aren't you helping potentially Virginia?
Yes, we
Yes.
may be working in Virginia with their voter protection program. As many of you guys know, back in 2017, control of the legislature came down to a coin toss. And there's a lot of, this is where voter protection is especially important, because you can help get those votes over the line if there are ballots that have been rejected, if there are voters who voted a provisional ballot and need to get their votes counted. So we're aiming to create an effective post-election program that will help to ensure that we don't get down to a coin toss, and that that we close that last mile and get a win over the line.
Great. Okay, and one final question. Does SPAN have any plans to help state parties look at mobilizing college students? Some swing states such as PA, Wisconsin, Michigan have huge state universities, which seem like a great target for increasing Democratic turnout.
So Wisconsin, just you all need to know, had just record turnout in our colleges. The lines in our colleges were enormous, and those students stuck with it and got through them. We definitely want to support organizing at the youth level at our colleges. I think the key to it is that SPAN is more about investing early so that you can build that first infrastructure and hiring RODs. And we can definitely be stopping at our universities and talking about like, what's our program and how are we doing that? But it's at the end of the cycle that traditionally we've brought in people who specifically just work on college. I would love to be able to say, no, we want a youth organizing director in every single state. But again, until we build the donor table, last year we raised $11 million for state parties, specifically for state parties. And we did not count a lot of your money in that, I think. But we want to be able to hire a youth organizing director in every single state. But at this point, we are not at the level that we can do that yet.
Great, thank you. All right, well, thank you so much for taking those questions. And now everybody's applauding.
Thank you.
I will turn the mic over to Lisa, and we'll turn it over to whoever is next.
Thanks, Martha and Kim. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll probably have you back again before long, but thank you for everything you're doing. It just sounds really great. So before we say goodbye to everybody, we have just a few quick updates, all of which are sort of fun. The first one is, if you didn't see the newsletter, we're having a live picnic on May 13th. So if you are able to attend the May 13th picnic and would like to help us in any way create an in-person picnic, we've done this a couple of times before. It was super fun. It was really successful. It was just so wonderful to be able to give people hugs or at least high fives. So if you can help with the picnic, please put your name and email in the chat. That would be really helpful. It's going to be in Chevy Chase, Maryland, in the backyard of Amy Kossoff, which is where we've had it before. We need help. So let me know. The next person I'm going to tap is Lynn Fletcher to just tell you a little bit about a really fun partnership that we are developing. Lynn.
Sorry, had to unmute. Hi, everybody. So this is fun. Lisa, Roberta McInerney, Amy Kassoff, and I met with 6 leaders of the George Washington University Swing Left student group. And we met with them to discuss ways that the two groups can partner together. And these young folk were amazing. They're engaging, they're smart, they're so enthusiastic. They had ideas about how we can help them and they can help us. So they have about 30 students in their group. And the ways that we can help them is one of the biggest is, they really want to canvass, and we can provide them rides to canvases. This year in Virginia is a very good opportunity to do that. So when our members are canvassing, we'll think about that. We'll make sure that we have a smooth way of doing that. we can help them pay for simple things they need. They wrote 3,000 letters for Wisconsin, only to figure out that they then needed to buy the postage and envelopes. They needed the money for that. It's not a ton. Sometimes we can do a little special small fundraising to help with things like that. We are sharing our canvassing video with them, and also, you know, they're students looking for work in DC, so we might be able to help them with professional development as well. Now, how can they help us? Tech. Instagram, Google Slides. They do amazing online flyers that we don't even understand how they make these beautiful things. They are also trying to set up swing left chapters at AU and Howard. So we at 31st Street have been trying for a long time to have some kind of partnership that brings some younger folk into 31st Street. And this opportunity to partner with these young people is a real win-win for us, and we are all really excited.
So you will hopefully see some evidence of our youth over the next 6 months. They go home for the summer, so they might not really get going until the fall, but hopefully we'll have a lot of connections with them once September gets going. Aaron is just going to give us an update about what the membership team is doing about membership.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So the membership team met a little while ago, and I just want to thank all of our membership team folks, some of whom are here, and especially Adele Dari, who is really helping do so much with membership right now with all the coordinating. And so we were talking about various initiatives we can do with two main focuses. One is to keep current members engaged and find new ways for people to, you know, feel like a part of the group, and then also to get new members and bring new blood into the organization and new networks so that we can expand our outreach. So just a few things that we've been talking about, and I just want to highlight these in case any of these are of interest to you. If they are, please let me know. First of all, self-care for activists. So, you know, all of that canvassing and fundraising we do, we need a little bit of, you know, help ourselves to keep going. So perhaps some kind of meditation group or mindful movement or some other effort like that. So that's one thing people talked about. A book group or perhaps an article group where people talk about some kind of relevant article that's coming up in the news that they want to kind of everybody will read and discuss together and come up with new ideas to, you know, invigorate what we do. A group to research and organize showing up in person now that we're coming out of our COVID cocoons at things like protests, farmers market kind of places, gay pride, anywhere where we think like left-leaning people might be likely to congregate in the DMV area. We can show up and we can have a presence and perhaps recruit new members that way. Something for down the line is we do a great job preparing people for canvassing. We want to start reaching out to people after they've canvassed to find out how that went and what kind of lessons we can learn, and also to really increase our impactfulness with canvassing. And then finally, we want to do a membership drive. So we often do fundraisers at 31st Street Swing Left, but we would like to do a membership raiser. So we're going to be talking about focusing in on perhaps a month or something where instead of raising dollars, we're hoping to raise members. And so it might even be an easier ask to ask all your friends instead of saying, oh, we don't need you to donate right now. We just need you to like join the organization and get the newsletter. And then hopefully they turn into donors down the road. And so I think that would be a really kind of fun activity to get involved with. So anyway, if any of this sounds of interest to you or something that you might know about, or you can give some advice about, please do let me know. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And we're really hoping that, you know, kind of like Jim was saying, 2023 is all about the off season. We want to really build up for 2024 because we've got a heavy lift ahead of us. And the more of us that are involved in this effort, the more impact that we can have. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Erin. So before we say goodbye, we just want to have a time for sort of open mic. Just a few minutes for anybody to ask any questions of anyone, to make comments, to give us feedback, to lodge complaints, whatever you would like to say, we would like to hear. But thank you all for coming, and thank you again, Kim and Martha, for coming. So if you want to, you can use you can do the reaction thing, or you can just open your mute. Take off your mute, or you can just wave at us, whatever you want to do. Anybody have anything? Victoria.
Hello. I was wondering whether there had been discussion about more on the canvassing conversation piece. I know the video is great and the training that's been developed so far, but I do find myself, certainly as a less aggressive person, needing more help with difficult conversations. And especially if we're going to get into red towns, having hard conversations when somebody yells at you, when somebody calls you names, when, how can you respond in an effective way, if not to, appeal to them, at least to not be the enemy. So that would be great.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
When it comes to Virginia, there's no statewide races in Virginia. So we're not, the priority, unlike when we have statewide races, like in Pennsylvania, we wanted to go to blue areas and red counties to turn out the blue votes so that it win statewide. In Virginia, we're really just trying to win specific legislature races. So, and we're going to be mostly going for turnout. So I love your question. I love the idea of trying to improve conversation and so forth. Fortunately, at least in the relatively short to intermediate term, we're going to be talking to Democrats. We're going to be talking to people that we want to turn out and have them do that. So, we are so far. I don't know. I don't want to sound too self-laudatory. In terms of training for canvassing, we are in such a better state than almost anybody else, that having the video and so forth, and having our Thursday orientation ahead of the canvass and so forth, that where we talk about technique. I should also say that two things. In Virginia, we're going to be partnering with the States Project. So for those of you who may not know the States Project is a wonderful, potent organization that works on legislature races. They raised $30 million in Pennsylvania last year. They were probably more responsible than almost anybody in winning those legislature races. They're going to work with us, and they're going to influence. They have a lot of influence with the people who organize canvases. So we think we're going to be in a better position than before to get canvas walk lists that we think will make more sense for us and for campaigns. So again, we'll be in a better position to be going after those high target voters.
Okay. I think it's just generally getting people comfortable talking to strangers. So less the vitriolic side, but thank you.
Okay, well, by the way, the Women's Summit, for people who live in Virginia, know about the Women's Summit. It was sometime in June or July. I see Martha likes that. We're hopefully going to be doing a session on canvassing with Rose Fabia, or anybody who wants to go to that. That's kind of a training, and get a good chance to network there as well. Over.
Thank you.
Virginia.
Yeah, two things. Now, can you put something out about the Women's Summit? I'm here in Virginia and I'm involved in the Democratic Party and I haven't heard about it yet. So that would be good.
Martha, can you put something in about So it's Network Nova.
Okay,
Google Network Nova. It's going to be where? It's going to be in Tyson's Corner, I think. It's not where you are, but it's
right. I can come
sometimes
up.
they travel around. Martha,
Yeah.
are they traveling around this time?
You're on mute, Martha.
Hmm.
Martha, you're on mute.
It was traveling around last year. It was in 3 places last year. I don't think it's in more than one this year, but Network Nova is the organizer for the Women's Summit. Network Nova has Friday noon meetings. And if you text me your email, I can make sure you can get on the next one.
Okay, great. And the other thing is that it makes sense not to get really involved until after the primaries, because if there's a couple of races, one in particular that you must know about, Joe Morrissey, who is an anti-abortion Democrat, and we have a chance to get rid of him, and he'd have to do that in the primary. So I don't know exactly where I'm going with it, except if you get if we get appeals to help him, help the person running against him, I think it's good to get involved. And the early voting starts on May 5th, and the primaries in June. So that's something we'll need to do before this Women's Summit, for example, or before we get really
June
involved.
23rd.
So
Oh, no, that's not it.
I do have my eye on that, Virginia, that race. And I did see that, I forget the name of his opponent.
I don't know either.
She greatly outraised him in terms of money.
It's
Oh,
Lucretia
In terms of
Baird.
what I do, that's as far as we would want to go. But I
Yeah,
think
okay, that's good.
I
Yeah,
might do pretty well in that race. Over.
yeah. I assume she's getting national support because it's a high visibility race. But I just thought I'd mention that.
Can I just say I went to a fundraiser for her yesterday
Yeah.
in Arlington,
Mhm.
and I'm not so sure she's got huge tons of money, but she's awesome, absolutely awesome. And even though it's a primary, I think that people ought to really think about supporting her because it's coming up quickly,
Mhm.
and it's an opportunity to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Anything else? Let's see, am I missing anybody? Okay, well, have a good Sunday evening, and thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you on Wednesday